All right, welcome back to Lionheart Radio. I'm your host, Rick Alexander, founder of Lou Aviv in San Diego, California. And today I am in San Diego. Actually, is this San Diego?
Yes, it is.
Okay, perfect. Today I am in San Diego, California with Dr. Meghan Helwig. She is the founder of Primal Strength PT. Thanks for being on.
Thank you for having me.
So for OG Lionheart Radio listeners, if you remember back, we had Dr. Helwig on a few months ago now, quite a few months ago. And one of the things you learn when you are trying to do your own podcast is that audio content is difficult. Quality audio content is difficult to come by. And we had such a great conversation filled with a ton of content. And I really just did not think that the quality of the audio content did the conversation justice. So I wanted to have you back on, talk about what you're doing now, some of the new things that you've been up to, and then and also just to provide more of what you've been doing for our listeners.
Awesome. Thank you.
So also right now, I saw on Instagram you've been doing a lot of stuff with RockTape.
Yes.
What do you do with them?
So starting December, I'm going to be teaching for RockTape. So I'm going to be doing like 3-day tours with a continuing education company, teaching their basic and performance courses, and then also their Rock Blades, their instrument-assisted tools courses.
So last time I think we did talk a little bit about RockTape, but for everybody listening, because I think that there's a lot of misinformation going around about RockTape in particular. So in your opinion, what is it good for? What can it be used for?
There's so many uses. So depending on the use, kind of depends on how I apply it, but basically I use it as a extension of my hand. So when I see a client and I do a lot of soft tissue work because I am a manual therapist, putting the tape on sends a signal to the brain. So it's kind of an extension of the work that we just used to reinforce what we just did and then let them go home and continue with their corrective exercises. So it could be used for pain. It could be used for kind of a neurosensory effect where just touching the skin is sending a signal to the brain to reinforce something that we're working on, like a pattern, some kind of movement pattern to give feedback, or it could also be used for edema and swelling. Okay. So depending on what we want to use it on depends on kind of how we're going to apply it.
Okay. So if we're talking, when you're talking about sending a signal to the brain, are you having them move through a range of motion that while you're manually manipulating and then having them do that same thing with the RockTape later, or what do you mean by that?
So it depends on what we want to do. So say it's for pain, the tape is actually going to be sending a signal, kind of trying to inhibit that pain signal to the brain. Or say you're using it for edema and swelling, we're using it as a lift-off effect. So there is a recoil in the tape, and we're trying to use that lift-off to open up space to actually allow more drainage or flow of the fluid under the tissue to clean out some of that swelling.
Okay, so if you go to any local CrossFit competition, you're going to see people taped up like a construction site. And what do you think? Right, so if you want to get the benefits of RockTape, do you think that you have to go to a physical therapist such as yourself? Are these, because I would say that most of the people, I think they're doing home jobs out there. Do you think that that's feasible? Because I know there are videos on YouTube on how to kind of manipulate this stuff. But
there are a lot of good videos, and even RockTape has their YouTube channel that shows you how to apply it. The thing is, how can you apply it? Even for myself, like I want to have it on my back. I can't physically do a good job putting it on my back or like upper thoracic area. You also a lot of times use it for posture. So trying to reinforce good posture. So if you're about to fall out of a posture, that depending on how you tape it will kind of give you a reminder. You start to feel that tension. It reminds you to get back into that good posture. There's a lot of pictures out there of even Rich Froning of him covered his whole back. During the games with certain things. And a lot of those
Which is why you see other people covered.
It's reinforcement for posture to maintain good form for certain things. So depending on how I apply it, so I would put my client into their ideal posture and then tape them. So then when they go to fall out of it, they get a reminder. Oh, they feel tension. It pulls them back in. So a lot of times you can use it for posture. You can use it for pain. And like that neurosensory effect, it's giving you a reminder. It's giving you feedback the second you start to get into faulty form.
You're trying to reprogram that movement pattern almost.
Exactly.
Gotcha. Now, you have a background in Ironman, right? And this year you progressed further than the Open in CrossFit, which is more than 99.99% of human beings. So with that, I mean, that background being so diverse, when people come to you, what are you trying to draw from everything? Do you have a way that you look at physical therapy in order to treat somebody? Does that make sense?
I would say I'm very outside the box. If you're coming to me from your shoulder, I'm looking at almost everything. I'm looking at the shoulder, but I'm looking at everything else in that. Our body works in planes. It's more movement patterns. We're not just like one muscle here or there. You can't test in isolation. It's all connected. So I'm looking at from the ground up, from the head down. I'm looking at their breathing. Breathing's huge, and then their history is going to be huge. So whether stuff that went on with them as a kid, they might not think is related, but it's going to have impact on what we find in our session.
We talked about this a little bit in the last time we talked, but I'm curious, is that holistic approach popular?
I think it's growing a lot. I hope it's growing a lot because that's what I want. I want people to find other practitioners that look at the big picture.
Right.
That aren't just going to be, oh, your elbow hurts, I'm going to work on your elbow and send you home. Because a lot of the times what's working well is what's painful. Usually it's above and below, whether it be maybe you had something going on in your wrist, maybe you had something going on in your shoulder, or it could even be neck, jaw, something else, head trauma, scars. I mean, there's so many different things. So that's where I break it down. And we're sitting there, we're talking a lot in the first session. And I try to get a lot of history going into the first session so we can, really get to the bottom of what could be driving the movement patterns or any pain that any of my clients are having.
And when you're talking about pain, when people have a pain, is there a way how do you know whether that is referred, whether that is being caused by some kind of compensation in movement, or whether people are, or whether whatever hurts is the actual problem?
I mean, pain is basically just our body's way of saying something's going on, whether it be, actual damage to tissue, or it could just be like a warning sign, something isn't right and we need to get to the bottom of it. So, is it pain in the same exact spot every single time? So it could be that tissue there, or does the pain move around? Does it feel different? So depending on the type of pain is going to dictate what I think is going on. Is it bilateral? Anytime something's bilateral, I don't think it's that. It's something more center. It's something more core, neck, breathing. Breathing is going to be the biggest thing.
Sure.
If they can't breathe properly, we're not going to get as far as we would. So I correct everyone's breathing as the first thing when they come in.
It's crazy how breathing is becoming kind of in the forefront of things right now. I think it's a lot with XPT and Brian McKenzie's work. And, I just finished up doing the Athlete podcast, and a lot of what we talked about was like reprogramming breathing patterns. And it's funny because we're in the midst of this technological revolution where everybody's racing towards singularity, where we're going to merge with fucking electronics, right? And it's like, no, we need to teach you how to breathe, something that we've been doing. It. Yeah.
I mean, just yesterday I went out on a bike ride and I tried to climb Torrey Pines solely through my nose.
How'd that go?
I failed miserably.
Okay.
But even just trying it was huge.
Yeah.
We don't realize how much we revert to breathing through our mouth, but when you breathe through your mouth, it's going to be more accessory. If you can focus on breathing through your nose, it's going to be more of a diaphragmatic breath. But it's also going to be huge for performance. It's going to be huge for recovery. It's going to be huge for posture. It's going to be huge for, there's so many benefits of switching to proper breathing that if we don't have a good foundational breathing, everything else is going to be off. If we can't breathe from our diaphragm, our core is going to be off. Our back's going to be off. Our pelvic floor is going to be off. Our main stabilizers that are going to affect how well our extremities move. If our foundation's off, it's going to all kind of have a cascade effect.
I saw Dr. Andy Galpin just released, he maybe didn't release it, but he just posted a study on his Instagram about how nasal breathing's actually been starting to be shown to actually just increase endurance. So that's another whole entire side effect.
It's going to be huge. When you take those top elite athletes too, if you can just, if there's one little thing that we can change, even a few seconds is going to make a huge difference, if we can just even focus on just our breathing alone could have a huge effect on how performance on a field, CrossFit, endurance, Ironman, whatever we're doing, it's going to have big carryover.
Yeah. So in the last ultra I did, I got a high altitude pulmonary edema. My lungs actually filled up with fluid, and I like literally was in a point where I could not breathe anymore. It was awful. But you know what I did, and because I had been working on nasal breathing, so I switched to nasal breathing, which obviously I couldn't maintain the same pace, but I switched to nasal breathing, and I actually can't describe the physiological reason for that to work, but it legitimately like got me out of that. I was able to get down to altitude, let my lungs clear up, and continue on. So it's huge.
It's I don't even know where to start with it, but if you look at your history too, is going to have a huge relationship to how you breathe. So anyone that's had anxiety, asthma, any surgeries, all that stuff. So a lot of people think, oh, I breathe right. But if you look at actually how they're breathing, usually 9 times out of 10, or I would say 10 out of 10, everyone has a diaphragm issue. Yeah. Every single person.
What do you think? People breathe too shallow? They don't get enough oxygen? What do you think is...
Oh, it turns into all shallow breathing. So anytime you've had any kind of surgery, or say anyone's had a baby and they've had a C-section, or any kind of scope or hernia repair, which a ton of lifters have had to go through hernia repairs. Yeah. You have that surgery, and afterwards you're like, oh, I have to protect it. So subconsciously in our brain, we don't want to breathe from our diaphragm anymore. We don't want that area to move because we're protecting those scars. So then all of a sudden you start breathing through your chest, and we don't even realize we're all shallow, shorter breath all out of our chest. Yeah. Not doing anything from the core. And then all of a sudden we're wondering why core stability is lacking, or why our backs are hurting more, because we're actually using our back instead of our intrinsic core. And
so you think that breathing problem or that breathing abnormality is causing some kind of compensation in posture?
100%. 100%. And it's totally a subconscious thing. It's not even a conscious thing that we switched. And that's where I like to come in and kind of teach my clients that, like, we have subconscious dysfunction. They don't even know that they're breathing wrong. So my job is to bring it to conscious dysfunction. So then eventually they're like, oh, wow, I didn't realize it. So then the next step is going to be conscious function, where they start to switch to proper breathing. Eventually our goal is going to be subconscious function. But like, you have to go through that whole span to get to where we want it to be, where we don't even think about it. But for a while, people don't even realize that I'm breathing totally through my mouth. Or like when I was up at RockTape, we just had a summit this past weekend, and it was basically all on breathing. The whole weekend was almost all on breathing. Really? And one of the tests, one of my friends and mentors, she's like, just go ahead, everyone, we're doing 7 burpees, and made it a contest. But really what the purpose was, like when we all stopped those 7 burpees, we were all breathing through our mouths. We didn't realize it. It was more of then, as a recovery reset, how quickly can you get back to like baseline breathing?
Yeah, down regulate.
Of switching to just all nasal breathing and get back to that base. But it was like just like a little test. We don't even realize how much we're all breathing out of our mouths. The second we are, all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's a competition, go all out. It's like we're all mouth
everything's
breathing.
Out the window. And everyone
not thinking about any of that kind of stuff.
And so that's actually an interesting point too, is like what techniques can people use? Because that's, I think a lot of times we finish an intense workout and then we just go for the protein shake and we put no thought into what comes next.
So one of the drills that she had us do this weekend was like a nasal clearing technique, where you took a huge breath in through your nose, out through your nose, plugged your nose, and started walking. And how many steps could you take before you had to take a breath? And it's funny how much more clarity or clear you felt after doing it. But I think it's just because it was just clearing, and it's like, it's more of the CO2 utilization. Like, how much are you truly utilizing? We burn off so much more when we're breathing through our mouth. You need that CO2 to carry the oxygen. So I think she said like ideal was like 80 breaths or 80 steps. I only got to like 30, and I was like, I had to take a breath. Some people like do like 10 steps, and they're like, and it's more of a mind game. It's like almost like a panic. Like, I need air. Yep. And it's like, you can train yourself to be able to go longer breathing properly, or being able to hold your breath longer. It's something we can train. And I think a lot of the more elite athletes, that's just one thing of that mental toughness that you can work on breathing. Who would have thought that that's going to be something that's going to be a game changer
Yep.
For our performance.
And, you know, the other part of that too is you can condition your mind to have a certain response to stress, which we're fucking terrible at if you don't practice it, right? Like I would see it all the time when I was when I was an instructor and we were putting students through underwater knot tying. Students would get down there and literally in 5 seconds start freaking the fuck out. And it was like, bro, you've been down here for 5 seconds. You were just freaking out because you're freaking out because all of a sudden your brain was like, oh, I don't have oxygen and I don't know how to respond. So it's interesting to what you're saying is like you can train yourself to have a calm response to that stressor. Yeah.
And my one friend, Shantae, she's the movement maestro on Instagram. She said, the first time she did it was like 3-4 steps. She's like, oh my God, I have to breathe. Yeah. You know, and the first time in that, like she told us that beforehand. So it was almost like it prepped us a little bit. So I'm like, okay, just stay calm. Yep. See how many steps you can take. And it was funny. There was like probably 30 or more of us in the room, and we were all just walking in like circle and seeing how many steps we could take until like you couldn't do it anymore. Right after the exercise. Right. No. This was like the nasal clearing. So big breath in and out through the nose, and then we're walking holding our nose. Okay. And then just as far as you can go until you had to like let go. Okay. And what's like the chief reason behind that? What do you think? The reason behind which, like doing that exercise. It was just more of a nasal clearing, and it's more of the CO2, and I would have to go back and look and see. She gave like a good description of it, but it was more of just that challenge, and it was more the mind game of seeing where you can train yourself to be able to, handle that stress. Yeah. Yeah. But it was more, she broke it down into the CO2 and oxygen and utilization and, because earlier in the day she had talked about recovery and mouth breathers, and it was like the whole big like shut your mouth kind of thing. Right. And that's what it's funny because that's what Brian McKenzie said on my podcast. He's like, we are a nation of mouth breathers. You know, and you know what's funny too is once you start putting in these kind of nasal breathing protocols, for me, because I was getting ready to run this ultra, what I would do to train is just jack the treadmill up as high as it could go, put it on 4 miles an hour, nasal breathe for 45 minutes to an hour. And it's just interesting because once you finish it, then you're cognizant of the fact that you are a mouth breather. You find yourself shutting your mouth a lot more through the rest of the day. You don't realize how much we're doing it. And that's the whole thing. It's like going through that subconscious to conscious dysfunction, realizing how bad we are at some of that stuff. And it's like posture. It's like sitting and like texting, all that stuff. It's like horrible posture. No one realizes how bad of a breather they are. So we're all bad breathers. We're all going to have diaphragm dysfunction. And if you think of the attachments on the diaphragm, you have core, pelvic floor, like everything from the back, the ribs, the spine, it attaches to everything. So if your breathing's off, all that other stuff's off. So like we're just doing ourselves a disservice. And what we work so hard in the gym. You think we're trying to like do everything with our diet, but then we just don't want to work on breathing. Like the basic, the biggest. That's the first thing we do when we're born. Right, is we breathe. Right, but we f it up along the way, and it's like we f up posture. We f up like look at us trying to squat compared to like a little baby squatting. Like they have perfect form. Yeah, and we just mess it up over the years. Yeah, is that the impetus behind Primal Strength PT? It is. So it was kind of like I was sitting around. I was actually one of the owners of the box I was at home, and we were trying to think of names. And I was like, that's what I want to get back to. It's like, I want to get back to the function that we were born and we were meant to have, and we lose it all. And if I can give that back to people, that's what I want. It's like my little slogan was like, unlock your potential. Like we were born with a certain amount of potential, but we just like cut it short over the years with all the stuff that we do, sitting in front of a desk, breathing horribly, diet, all that other stuff. So if I could just unlock a few of those things and give that back to people, that's what I want to do. Yeah. And people at that point realize how much more you're actually capable of, right? And so let me ask you this. We've talked a little bit about breathing. What are other big things that people are going to see in their everyday life as we know it now that really start like standing in the way of people's full potential? Like what kind of things? Maybe like being on your phone. Like what kind of things do you think are really slowing us down as fit humans? Oh yeah. Well, first of all, our jobs, like just our posture, sitting. I mean, if people are sitting all day, get a stand-up desk. Just little reminders of little things that they can do. Cause I feel like that's one. We're not meant to sit. I think that destroys us. Our diets doesn't help us at all. Right. Of course. It's the anxiety of stress of everyday life. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about this today. It's like we think that, you have to manipulate the inputs that you get in order to get a desired outcome. But we, for whatever reason, forget about that. And we think we can
like input fast food and output high performance, or it's just fucking crazy cycle.
No, and it's like, and a lot of times, are you an emotional eater? Like for me, I know that was the case a lot too. Like I didn't realize, looking back at what I ate in high school and like college and stuff, it was horrible.
Right.
But now it's like, are we eating to perform? Or are we eating because, our stress in everyday lives? Like it's more emotional eating, stress eating, and that carries right over to our performance. And how do we carry our stress? I see so many people that come in that are like, their neck is driving everything. Like their whole posterior chain is their neck is compensating. Like I try to test their hips and they blow out totally weak. All I have them is like tilt back or shrug a little, and they're testing super strong, and their pain goes away. I'm like, you have to use your neck just to get your hips to fire. Like these weird connections, but it's their everyday life, is their stress. That's how they happen to carry their stress. So just breaking down what they do every day, or even just like sleeping, other stuff, breaking down their little habits, but the things that you do. So like say the things you do all day, 8-10 hours a day with work, are what are hurting you, but you don't feel the pain when you're doing that. You feel it when you go to the gym to do your 1 or 2 hours. So it's like the stuff we love, we end up being in pain, but it's not from the gym. It's from what you're doing all day. So
something you just mentioned, which was your relationship with food. Clearly you figured out some way to curb that. I'm assuming, because you're a high performer.
Yeah.
Right. So what has helped for you? Because I think that the food relationship is one of the most mismanaged problems in the United States.
Oh, it's the biggest problem. I mean, I still struggle with it. I mean, it's something I always have since a kid. I grew up a swimmer. I swam 2 to 4 hours a day, so I could go home and eat almost whatever I wanted after doing 2 to 4 hours of cardio every day.
Yeah, as a young person.
Yeah, and my metabolism was fine. And then I went to college and I didn't swim anymore, but I played field hockey and I was a goalie. So I was not running as much. I was not doing the cardio, and I put on a ton of weight. And, and it was the emotional eating. I didn't like that I put on weight. I have a horrible sweet tooth. That still gets the best of me all the time.
Yep.
But,
sure does.
And then I was in the whole bodybuilding and figure and bikini world. And that was like a whole nother test of, cutting for a bikini show.
Yeah.
And seeing what my body would respond to. And I totally plateaued. I had someone doing my diet that I think they did diet more for people that take supplements and other drugs or whatever. And I wasn't. I was natural. And, I wasn't responding.
Right.
And so I switched to someone else and doing more macros. And then, I still play around with it now. And from going from an endurance athlete and, doing all cardio to 20 plus hours a week when I was training for Ironman, like I could still eat a lot more then, and I wouldn't see it as much. Where now, if I'm not doing as much cardio and the heavier lifting, I put on weight quickly. So it's just playing around with it. And I think I found doing macros is what works the best for me.
Oh, that's good to know, because I started that today.
Yeah.
Literally today. And I've messed with a lot of other things. But you know what I hear, like just from your story talking about it, it's like you are constantly evolving in your approach to things, right? Which
Always.
is, I think, probably one of the, they say success leaves clues. And one of the really good things about this podcast is I get to interview all these high performers. And one of the things that I'm finding is like they always have that evolution mindset. They're always down to learn something new, to try something new. And then they carry that into the next thing they do.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, if I said I knew everything, like it's almost like the more I know, the more I don't know. Yeah. It's like the PT I am today versus the PT I was a year ago. And even like I treat totally different. I was beating myself up doing, it was just like all ART everywhere. My hands were killing me. And their knee hurt. I was working all around their knee. And now I've changed in how I treat. I've changed in my approach. I think it's more of a holistic, you have to look at the whole person. If a person comes in and they're super stressed and I ask them what's going on in their everyday life, like if they're closed off and like not willing to be open, I don't know how beneficial our session is going to be.
Sure.
Because how much of their pain is truly a mechanical thing, or how much of it is an emotional and has other drivers behind it, like what's manifesting in their body. So it's kind of like I need to be in a good place first off when I'm treating someone, because if I have a lot of stuff going on in my life,
you have to be fit for service, right?
Like I have to be open to being like, we play around with this where like I'll muscle test someone and in my head I'm going to say like, I'll think they're going to be really strong and like they test strong. And in my head I'll say like they're going to test really weak and then they test weak. Like it's amazing the power of our minds.
It is.
And being able to clear things and put stuff aside and being open when you treat someone. And also the patient being open and trusting. So they need to be able to buy in. And was it Brett Contreras, his the book he recently just wrote, the coaching book, I have it in my room. Talking about buy-in.
Okay, it's not conscious coaching. Okay.
Yes.
Dude,
yeah, so,
it's on my list.
Yeah.
Can't wait to read it.
So he was there at the summit this weekend and spoke and everything. And it's talking about just buy-in. And you can't have the same approach with every person, because every person either learns differently, understands differently. So, you have to be able to be open to maybe changing your approach with someone. Someone you might have to be super soft with, and another way where someone else you have to be like a hard ass and be like, this is what you have to do. If you don't do it, like you're gonna get hurt.
Right.
And scare them.
Right.
Like you might have to use scare tactics, and someone else you have to be super soft and be like, it's gonna be okay. Like you're gonna be fine. If we just do this, everything's gonna get better. And
that's one of the toughest things. Like I personally, I've just come from my mindset is like, just figure it the fuck out, man.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, and I was, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Active Life RX. Mm-hmm. He's a chiropractor, really, really just on point, dude. And one of the things he said is like, his mindset was like, look, you need to figure out that life is happening because of you and not to you. And if you can't figure that out, you need to get out of my way.
Exactly.
And he was like, I've had to evolve from that mindset if I want to fucking help people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's interesting to hear you echo those same thoughts.
Yeah, because if I keep in my mind what I think it is when a patient comes in, like, oh, they come in with this, and I'm like thinking, oh, it's going to be this, I'm going to just treat them this way. It might be totally different. And then I'm sitting there stumped. I'm like, why isn't it working? Why aren't they getting better?
Right.
But I can't. Nothing fits. Nothing is cookie cutter. Nothing is. It would make my job a lot easier if it is. I could just be like, okay, this hurts. Do these 3 exercises and you're good to go.
Yeah.
But they might come in with something, and I have them working on their jaw and their big toe. Who knows where it's coming from? Mm-hmm. Every single person has their own path. Someone might have had a surgery years ago that totally altered a movement pattern they would have never thought of. Mm. And that could be I had a patient coming in. He's coming in for foot pain. He had his gallbladder removed 4 years ago, and all these other symptoms he's having started after the gallbladder, but he never would have thought. He never even touched. He's like, I don't even know where the scars are. And I'm sitting there, he had a hairy chest, and I'm trying to look through and find where the scars were. And I found it, where it didn't move, and I just touched the scar. Everything else started to fall back online. Tested his core, the back pain went away. Tested his hips, they're a lot stronger. Wow. So I sent him home. All his homework was for the first week is working on the scar and then practicing breathing through 360 belly breathing and core and glute activation. Damn. That's all he gets for the first week to see if that sticks.
And so that's really good, but you have to be bought in on every single patient in order to make that affect that kind of a change.
Yeah. And so he was blown away. He didn't understand it, but it's I didn't even really get to touch his foot that much because there was so much. If I can't fix that core foundation, it's like a baby when they first start walking. Their arms are out, their legs are out, they're all wobbly. It's if you're not stable in your core, your extremities aren't going to move the way you want them to. So if you can get the core more stable, then your extremities can move. So same with our legs and our feet. We're out there running, but maybe we just had surgery, a little easy, abdominal scope or something. Mm-hmm. Even that, or even just some kind of you're celiac, or you have some kind of inflammation or food sensitivities, and intestines are super inflamed. Mm-hmm. That alone can affect your core, shut down your core, and then your extremities are going to be working differently than they usually would.
Sure.
Yeah.
And so when you maybe when you're programming your own work, do you program your own workouts? Do you have a coach?
I have a coach.
Okay. When you program workouts for other people, or maybe you stay cognizant of this in your own programming, how much core work do you put in?
I mean, I could probably do more of when I do it, but now I've changed, and as I've grown and realized that is key. Mm-hmm. For me, when every warm up every day, I go through a little mobility drill, but a bunch of drills, I'm crawling every single warm up. So I get on my hands and knees, I'm doing breathing, I'm crawling. That's our primal pattern. So a lot of times, Gray Cook used to say, if your kid starts walking early, kick him back down.
You're talking about a bear crawl.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. But hovering over the ground. So knees not touching.
Yep.
And I'll rock back and forth, side to side, all different directions while I'm breathing. But it's kind of getting that primitive pattern back.
Yeah.
And giving that cross pattern firing in the brain. The later the walkers sometimes were the better athletes, where they were drilling in that cross pattern firing longer. Mm-hmm. So. And
so, okay, cool. So you finished with bikini, and then you moved into Ironman from there?
I did. I went into triathlon. Oh, I think I did. Bikini was 2011. So I started triathlon like 2005, but took a little break when I was back in school.
Okay.
From it.
Okay.
And then kind of got back into it.
Okay. Did you start off with Ironman distance?
No, I started off with sprints, then Olympics, and then I was not a sprinter. Like, I could run fast, but not super fast or sprints. Right. I could go longer. I was just more of an endurance, like, longer.
I hate anything under a marathon. I fucking hate it.
So funny, I said I would never do a marathon.
Okay.
Unless it was in an Ironman.
Really?
So I've only done a marathon, so it might be a little messed up and backwards.
Right.
But I was like, I'd rather swim and bike before having to just go run, because I hated. That's why I was a goalie. I didn't want to run. I hate running. I was a swimmer. I was a competitive swimmer my whole life.
Right.
Love biking, but running just.
That's the worst part.
The worst part for me.
Man, okay. So getting into Ironman training, I'm only asking this because I'm curious because I'm getting ready to do my first Ironman.
Ooh, which one?
I'm going to do one in Florida in December. Mm-hmm. So I've been tiptoeing around. It's been on the bucket list forever, and I'm like, all right, man, it's time. Your aerobic conditioning is where it needs to be. I mean, I've been running a ton. I've been doing a lot of bike packing actually on the weekends, like not for fitness.
You're going to be so fine.
Yeah, I think I'll be all right.
Yeah.
But what did your training look like? Because I want to see how fucked up I am.
So I found out like less was a little bit more for me.
Okay.
I never ran more than 15, I think, before, but that's because I was dealing with an injury.
Okay.
And when I got a few weeks, like I was supposed to have a few more long runs leading up to Placid, but I did do 2 or 3. So I did Ironman Lake Placid in 2014. I did do Quasi, which was a half Ironman, and I did do a half Ironman in Florida that year, leading up to it. So I had 2
like a B race.
Mm-hmm, okay. I had 2 half Ironman races in there. When I got towards Ironman, so like my Saturday would be a 6-hour bike ride with like an hour run afterwards.
Yeah,
Sunday would be like maybe a 30-minute to an hour bike, but then like a 2 or 3 hour run. And then I was a swimmer, so swimming was not the issue for me. So I just swam to maintain. So I maybe only swam once or twice a week.
Okay.
The swim for me was just, you don't get that much time.
You don't.
I wish the swim was like 4 miles. That'd be great. But,
Jesus.
Yeah. No. So then like Mondays would be like a recovery swim day. Tuesdays would be, I was probably doing 17 to 20 hours a week though.
If you do an Ultraman, the swim is 4 miles. You know what that is?
Yeah, but then how far is the run?
Yeah, 50 miles.
Yeah, that's too far.
Yeah. But Ultraman's like a double distance Ironman, but it's done over 3 days.
See, I would love to do that. If I can get my foot better, I've been dealing with foot injury. I want to do Ironman again.
In February.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you did, what was it like adjusting to those brick workouts, going from the bike to the run?
Your legs feel like lead.
Like there's cement in them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not alone in that.
No,
Okay.
They feel like full-blown lead when you get off. Like,
Okay.
So you think at the end of your run, you want to start spinning out your legs. Drop the cadence. I mean, so the cadence gets higher.
Yeah.
Drop the resistance down and start spinning and flushing out your legs a little bit before you get onto the run. Like, that's what I would do. Just same thing on my swim. Like, at the end of the swim, I would start kicking a little bit more towards the end to start waking up the legs. Because I usually don't kick too much when I swim.
Yep.
Just as a warm-up heading out.
Right.
But, yeah, and I had a switch. Like, I think the reason I hated running so much is because I would go out too fast and then just die all the time. And my coach, he's like, I want you, like, tripping over your feet in the beginning of your run. Like, you need to slow down, and I want you negative splitting it. Like, I just want you doing a slow build. And it changed, and I actually started enjoying running, because then I would finally get to, like, 5-6 miles. I'm like, this isn't miserable, because I just didn't, like, go out
Hit
too
the
much.
Red line right
yeah, and then I was done.
Yeah.
And it was like a slow build, and I was loving it until, I got hurt. But
how many Ironmans did you do? One?
Just one.
Okay.
I still want to get revenge because my bike broke at mile 40.
Oh, damn.
I was stuck in a small ring for 70 miles. Yeah.
It's awful.
I know.
That's one of the things I like about competing, though, because, competing's never a perfect day. If you compete 1,000 times, you're lucky to get one day where weights feel light.
Yeah, and
or where
probably the bigger thing for Ironmans can be nutrition, too.
Yeah.
Like, if your nutrition's off and you go get on the run, your stomach's a wreck. Like, I was trying to get, I think I was trying to get in 250 calories or so an hour.
Okay.
On the bike.
Okay.
It was like pouring rain for part of it. It wasn't super hot, so we were okay with that. I was so excited. I had like Reese's peanut butter cups in my halfway bag, frozen, but then my bike broke, so I was so flustered with that I didn't even grab them. So I was like all disappointed. I'm like, that's all I was looking forward to. Like, I wanted the chocolate. And so just having to adjust. My training leading up to it, I think I was oversaturating my bottles with calories. And the last 2 6-hour bike rides, I got violently sick. at like the last hour of the bike ride, and then the last one like an hour later. Super sick because I was just putting too much in my bottles.
Yeah, I've been there. That's like one of the things I like about endurance sports is you have so many things to manage, and if you're doing a real endurance sport like an Ironman distance thing or an ultra marathon, like you have to like manage those systems for a very long time. And it's a lot of time for shit to go wrong.
Oh yeah, and going into Ironman, it was totally blind. Like I couldn't use what I was doing before, but I didn't have any more training time to try something else. So I just used what was on the course. Yeah. And I was like, I hope it all goes well. And it actually went great nutrition wise, but it was more my bike breaking and my foot injury. Yeah. So I was doing like a walk around.
What was your foot injury?
We still are dealing with that. I would just get really bad heel pain. And I think it's more neural coming from my back. Don't get any back pain, but it is more in like nerve type pain. And
have you spent time working on your gait? Like working on your stride and the
I did, and I was doing well. I started a couple at Offshore CrossFit are running coaches too, and nice. We played around with making sure I'm more on my toes, shortening my gait, and things were feeling good. But then some of the stuff started coming back. I actually got a massage that lasted way too long. She was great, but it was like a 2-hour massage, and I feel like she unraveled me and took away all my compensations. And I was like, I need those back because I was really good at compensating.
Now, released everything so you weren't tight in the areas that allowed you to compensate.
Yeah, so she released everything, but I should have gotten on the floor and just started crawling right after she worked on me to kind of reset stuff, and I didn't. We just started talking, and then next thing you know, I went to the gym, then I had a deadlift, and all these old injuries came back. So the foot injury came back this year, the week after I got that massage. So I'm not really a proponent of like full body, like hour or two massages. I'm a huge proponent of body work.
Work on what needs to be.
If we know, like if something's tight, why is it tight? Like, if you're just going to go and release it, you might be taking away what your body's using to protect you. And that's totally what happened to me. Yeah. Like, she took away a bunch of stuff, and then I didn't replace it with activating what needed to be done. And all those old injuries came back. It just set me up to get hurt even more.
I had a conversation with a really high-level power lifter, and we were talking about yoga, and he was like, man, once I got into it, my lifts started going to shit, and I felt like I was going to get hurt because as a power lifter, whether that's good for regular life or not, doesn't really matter, but as a powerlifter, you rely on being tight in certain areas. Oh yeah, in order to,
and it's taking away stability. Like your brain, like when you go to bend over and you can't touch your toes and you feel it in your hamstrings, that's your brain telling your body, don't go any further. I don't feel safe. It's not because your hamstrings are tight. It might be your brain saying, don't go there. So like then we just go, no, I just need a foam roll. I need to stretch and do all this stuff to my hamstrings, and you're just taking away what your body's using to protect yourself. So then next thing you know, you're like, why does my back hurt? Right. Well, because you just went further than you should have because you're sitting there trying to stretch your hamstrings all the time. Or why do they get even tighter after you stretch them a little bit? Because that's like the whole foundation of my practice is the why. Why are you moving the way you are? Why do you feel what you feel? And then breaking that down and getting to the bottom of it without, just giving you a whole bunch of exercises. Here, just do these for your shoulder because your shoulder hurts. Right. Why is your shoulder hurt? Is it because maybe your neck's not stable, so your shoulder has to work more? Or is your thoracic spine not moving enough, so the shoulder is working more again? So it's like the joints above, below, around it. It's like breaking it all down.
Do you think it's possible to self-diagnose things like that, or do they need to go to someone like you?
They should know their body well, but sometimes it's hard to put the puzzle together. Like me, being a PT, I'm still hurt. Like I need another hand. I can't. Yeah. Sometimes I just want to turn it off and say, have someone else look at me, pretend I don't know anything.
Take subjectivity out of it.
And just, see what you can see. Because I can't test myself. So it's hard for us to test ourselves. Like, is it a stability issue? Is it just a mobility issue? Yeah. Is it a motor control? Is it emotional? Like, if it's emotional, we get in our own way. We need someone else to help us to, break stuff down sometimes.
Yeah. Man, so moving from endurance into CrossFit. Did you take a lot of what you knew in endurance and do you apply it to CrossFit, or did you kind of feel like you had to go back to the drawing board?
I think it helped me a ton because I had an engine, but I had just never done a lot of the functional, heavier lifting. So it was a lot, the reason I started in with CrossFit too, I was injured and I was like, I need something competitive, but I can't run right now. I can't race. I can't, push myself like I want to. But then I realized I was like, oh, I can. I'm doing it this way and it doesn't hurt that bad. Yeah. So I had a huge advantage that give me a 20-minute workout. halfway through, I'm just getting warmed up.
Right.
I'm ready to go, and everyone else is starting to fade out, and that's where my engine would kick in.
Mm-hmm.
But then come technique and heavier lifting, like.
But I feel like you're strong.
Now.
Okay.
Being a Division I athlete, they didn't have us squatting. Like, I
Really?
didn't start squatting until I was in my mid-30s. Like, that's just weird.
Yeah.
I was like, I should have been squatting my whole life. Like, I distinctly remember getting screened by a PT, one of my mentors, and we were doing it over FaceTime. And he's like, let me see you squat. And I fell flat on my back. Like, I couldn't even get to 90, and I fell flat backwards.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, that's pretty pathetic. I'm a physical therapist, and my squat's horrible.
Right.
I'm more functional now after 2 years of CrossFit than I ever was. Division I sports, Ironman. I feel like when I was just doing Ironman, holy cow, my body was so not functional. I mean, it was for Ironman, but for all other aspects, totally not.
Like, as the host of this podcast, I'm constantly chasing an evolved conversation on the physiology behind the human condition. And that is like what I fucking do, right?
Yeah.
And I get to meet people like you that are like on the forefront of this. But if you go to a high school strength and conditioning coach, or like I stepped into mine a while back and I looked in and I'm like, wait,
what are they doing?
What the fuck are you doing? Like, we know this is not, God, we've evolved, like, but people haven't. And that's,
and they're still stuck in that stupid box. It's like that old mentality, and it's unfortunate. Mm-hmm. But thankfully, I think there's a newer movement going, whether it be the breathing now. All of a sudden, it's like the new trend. It's not that it's a new trend. Yes, I want it to be a new trend because I want everyone to like look at breathing, but it's been around for a really long time. But it's just finally the research is coming out, or people are starting to pay attention to it. Yeah. Of how it can affect us. Yeah. Just movement. Like how shitty with all the technology we have now, we're not moving. Like you and I, when we were kids, like. You go outside and play. Right. You go inside for dinner. You go back outside and play. Like, there's no sit in front of the TV, sit in front of the computer. Never. I don't remember washing my hands 500 times a day as a kid. Like,
no. My mom, I remember we had like a 20-minute rule. Like, I had to eat for 20 minutes because I would literally scarf my food down in 2 to get the fuck outside.
Oh, yeah. Then I was the oldest of 5 kids. So we come home from swim practice. Like, we ate fast because if you didn't eat fast enough, there wasn't going to be seconds for you. Right. Like, and we were starving after 2 hours of practice. It's like, we were like, my mom would just sit there and it would be like gone. Like, she would just make huge bowls of stuff and it was just gone. And we were all, I was probably the heavier out of my sisters. It was like, they always made fun of me for that. Like, I would stretch out their clothes, whatever. But, like, we were all endurance athletes to some extent. They were more sprinters than I was. But that's because I chose the longer events because maybe I could beat them because they were so much better at sprinting than I was. So I'm like, I have to do something that I'm not getting beat at. Right. But finally, just that whole lifestyle is like, I think, technology is great. And now we can look at all the numbers. We can break down this. And now you can look at all these other, like,
Yeah. It's good when it doesn't come at the cost of intuition. Yeah. Right. So how do you think, and I'm just curious, how do you think we kind of correct the ship then?
I think we need to make people more aware. Like, do people understand, like, we're basically killing ourselves. Right. Eating shitty, breathing like crap, moving like crap. And we're just setting ourselves up and don't even get me started on healthcare and, drugs. Like a lot of the doctors like, oh, just take this drug and it'll make you feel better. That's just causing so many other problems. Like if you just cleaned up your diet, started moving and learned how to breathe, a lot of the stuff will go away. A lot of the like stuff that we have going on is because of our shitty lifestyle. Clean that up and you don't need all the crap the doctors just want to feed you all the time. Right.
I read a study in the UK the other day that said, and this is for the UK, but Western civilization is pretty similar. You're more likely to get cancer now than you are to get married or buy a house.
Oh, I believe it because the stuff they were putting in your bodies, like it just has the whole like chain reaction of what it does to us. You put certain drugs in your body and then it does something else and then you treat that with more drugs and everything's becoming more resistant. So then you need to step everything else up and and so many doctors are either so quick to cut or so quick to give drugs instead of trying other stuff. Yeah.
Well, the holistic approach, like, I was just talking about with you, the way that you do it, like, that takes time. Like, if you are concerned about the monetary results of your practice, like, really, it makes sense to put people on a conveyor belt. Yeah.
But actually, it's a lot cheaper to pay for a PT than it is to go in for MRIs, drugs, surgeries, all that other stuff. Yeah. In the bigger picture of it all, it's cheaper. It might not, like I think people are looking for that quick fix all the time.
Yeah.
They're looking for the quick fix. Oh, if I take this pill, it's going to fix me. Or
Path of least resistance.
Yeah.
Always.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, but I'm not one of those PTs where it's like, you have to come 3 times a week for 6 weeks, for 12 weeks. Like, come in once. Let me give you a screen and like show you where you're at. Let you be aware of where you're at, and then give you a little program to do. Maybe I'll see you the next week. See you. I do a lot of like maintenance plans. Like, some people I'll see 1 or 2 times a week, or maybe 3, depending on if it's something going on or if we're leading up to a big event that we need to correct a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
And then we kind of wean down once a week, and then, or it might be once every other week, or once a month as like tune-ups to make sure our body is like staying on track and we're not developing more compensations. That I'd rather see someone before they're really injured, and then where we're even thinking about surgery. You know, if we can prevent that, that's the goal. To get people in and clean up their movement patterns. They might not have to have pain. They might just feel a little off. Like, that's what I love to do, where then you look at their history and break it all down and give them stuff to do. And maybe it's just a little routine before they start to work out. Maybe it's a mobilization or, you know, activation kind of little like quick 2-3 minute thing to do that they can do a few times a day, you know, and that's going to prevent them from getting hurt.
And so pre-show, we were talking a little bit about the direction of your practice, and you mentioned virtual treatment?
It's, well, virtual consults. So going through and doing a consultation, seeing what's going on. So talking to them about their history, the path they've been on and where they're at, looking at their movement patterns, even doing a virtual consult. Like, say if you're not here and it's remote and you have another practitioner and you want to have someone else in the room, or sometimes it's even better having someone else in the room, because then I can have them do little tests on them and see what's going on. So if there's another person there, it can be even better. But it depends on the type of athlete too. If it's a golfer, I might have them record a golf swing, or have them record a few things. Or say an endurance athlete, record their gait, but also record their gait at the end of their run. Because a lot of times, sometimes you don't see how their movement patterns change when they're fatigued. Right. So virtually, I can have them where you FaceTime, but then you might have also sent me some other stuff and look at that. Yeah. And then kind of develop a plan from there. And
so therein lies the huge benefit of technology.
Yes. So that's where we need it. Yeah. To our advantage, and not be just sitting in front of it.
Right. And is that something you're offering currently?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So it's something where I just opened up a new office location up in Carlsbad. So I'm out of offshore CrossFit. And so I'm up there. I'm also, I have the RockTape where I'm traveling, but that's only once a month. But that's the nice part about being able to be remote too, is you can do it from anywhere to offer those sessions. So I have on my website, you can email me, and then we can set it up from there. There isn't a link to schedule yet, which that will be coming on the website. But for right now, just contacting me, and it's more of a appointment
basis. Just figure it out. Okay. And what's your email?
It's Meghan.Helwig, so MEGHAN.HELWIG @gmail.
Okay, cool. And we'll link that up in the show notes. If you guys are driving, don't fucking crash your car right now. So, all right. So before we move on from training, you're focused on CrossFit, right?
For my training? Yeah. Or, yes.
Okay. So, because I was following your kind of journey this year, and you went beyond like I said at the beginning of the show, you went beyond the open, which is...
That was my goal, and I surprised myself, which was nice.
Yeah. And so, but during that, you're still, like you said, you were just climbing Torrey Pines on your bike, working on nasal breathing. Is that just to maintain that aerobic base, or what is your kind of approach to training? I
wanted to race a little bit, so I wanted to do both this year, but still struggling with the foot injury with the running. So I've been trying to get in the pool, and then also keeping my cardio up. So whether it be just in the morning jumping on the trainer for an hour, just spinning out, and then usually once a week I try to get in an hour or two ride to keep up the endurance side. I don't want to lose my engine. While I'm doing the owner at Offshore has open programming, so we've been like training for next year's open. So focusing on my weaknesses, but then also keeping the endurance stuff in there too.
Nice. Have you found that adding the endurance or keeping the endurance stuff has hurt your strength numbers at all?
Not at all. I mean, I feel like I'm almost working out a little bit less than I used to. Where I used to probably overtrain, where now it's like a focused plan, which I love, and my numbers keep going up. And it's not even like a ton of, I mean, yes, that we do go heavy, but I'm squatting only once or twice a week. And I'm still hitting PRs. Like, I mean, because I'm still 2 years in, so I mean, I think hit some PRs more often than once you've been doing it for a while.
2 years, and you're probably getting to that point where you
start to hit some plateaus.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of form stuff going on, and we have awesome coaches at Offshore, so it's like they're constantly giving it's the same thing with PT. It's like they're finding the right cue for the right person. Yeah. Just like we talked with the coaching and Brett's stuff with conscious coaching, finding the right cues and someone could say the same thing 5 different ways, and it just took only one of them kind of stuck and would make a change. Sure. So numbers haven't been going down. If anything, they've been going up on everything, which I love.
Yeah.
I think diet has been playing into that too, but also just the not overtraining and just listening to my body.
That's cool. What, and this can be physical therapy based, this can be training based, whatever you think. What are you most excited about that's coming down the line right now? It can be the world of technology.
I mean, it's fun with technology. I'm hoping to get a lot more content out soon. I'm on Instagram. It's Primal Strength Doc. Okay. It's more my training lately. But now that I have a new office and stuff opening up, I'm hoping to get a lot more content out for people. So probably more just growing the business because we just opened a month ago, and so finally having a home base is fun and exciting.
Yep. And what's going to be your content medium? Are you going to blog? What are you going to do?
Just more probably short little videos to kind of show little correctives, kind of explain that, outside the box thinking, like, if you have this, it might not just be that, like showing different examples.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Those videos are the reason I originally hit Claudia up to reach out to you to come on the show. Because before, I think it was the last Open, I was watching some of your videos on like activation and different things.
There was the pec release, releasing the front, activating the back. Yep. Kind of thing.
And I'm like, God, this needs to get out to people.
Yeah. So I want to put together some content and some videos on like the typical patterns I find or typical dysfunction. Whether it be breathing, whether it be scar stuff, whether it be, big toe and how it affects the hip all the way up to the opposite shoulder. There's tons of different relationships. If you look at the Thomas Myers, the anatomy trains, we're all connected. Yeah. So there's anywhere along that pathway that could, be causing something going on in the foot, the knee, the hip. Right. Anywhere.
Yeah. The last time we did this interview, did we have the Lionheart kicker? Okay. Lionheart kicker is based on advice. So if you could give advice and it were guaranteed that everybody in the world would hear it, and I should have hit you with this beforehand.
Now I'm being put on the spot.
If it were guaranteed that everybody in the world would hear it, you're given a stage for the day to be translated into every language. They might not all follow it, but they would hear what you said. What would you tell people? And it could be based on training, or it could be based on physical therapy, or just life shit you know about.
Some of my mentors have said, like, where it is, it isn't. So, like, not getting obsessed with, like, my elbow hurts, like I use it as a PT example because this is stuff I love. Not getting so focused on just that and obsessing about it, being open-minded in that so many other aspects of life play into how our bodies move. So if we could just be open. So a lot of times people will be like, you're doing voodoo stuff. Like, what the hell are you doing? Right. Just be open to something because it might actually work. When we close our minds off to stuff, we're like losing out on so much in life. Yes, it might be a little awkward, but that's that whole saying, like, life begins outside your comfort zone. Right. So if the practitioner you're seeing is doing something a little weird, don't shut yourself off to it because you never know what kind of influence it could have on your life. So just being open-minded about stuff and like being open to, weird shit that I'm going to be like working on a scar and it's going to make you like the scar on your stomach makes your toe pain go away. Yeah. Like, that could really happen. Like, so being open to like anything's possible. Yeah. And just allowing that to happen. Yeah.
And that's good movement advice. And that's probably good life advice. Yeah. Nice. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come back on the show and thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Lionheart Radio. I hope that the information from today's show will make you fitter, happier, and healthier. For the show notes of this episode and every episode, head to www.lionheartrad.io. Yep, just like Lionheart Radio. And please, if you have the time, head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. It really helps us to know that we're on the right track in delivering you reliable information and value. As always, feedback is welcomed. If you have any comments on the show or like to suggest a guest, send me an email at rick@luavive.com. That's LUAVIVE.com. CrossFitMastersAthleteCompany.com. Thanks for your support, and we will see you next time.
Bitch, I feel good. Don't I look stupendous? My shine is so endless, and shit you can do to end this. Even when I'm dead, niggas still gon' bump that chip shit. Coke, white, Escalade on cinches for you dipshits. So you won't forget this. Midwest nigga be the coldest. Cleveland.